Alrighty, we got another match for the championships. This one between Heth and TeamOkay. We're in the Magpie division of the bracket right now, and TeamOkay just upset the 5th seed in the round of 64. Can't relate. So now we got the 38th seed taking on the 64th seed, who has taken on the spot of the 5th seed in our first kingdom. Okay, so we got villages with a rustic village and bandit camp plus innovation. If rapid expansion activates, that's a nice village effect. For draw, there's old witch, magnate, and envoy. Rustic village could be net draw here if you discard 2 faithful hounds and then just set them aside again and discard them again each time. Faithful hound is also a draw card. For trashing, basically no trashing. Bishop can trash, but it's not really useful as a trasher because it's letting your opponent trash as well. Late in the game, it's more of a scoring card. And then for plus buy, there's no buy either. We do have Artisan for gains and Bishop for points, so there's definitely stuff to build to. Both players open with Clerk Silver. How do I feel about that? Clerk Silver seems like a good opening for hitting 5. I would consider Envoy Silver as being more likely to spike 6. Like you find Envoy turn 3, you play. I'd probably even buy Innovation before your first Artisan, because then if you hit 6 again, you can Artisan and top deck something immediately using the Envoy effect, or using the Artisan effect rather. But as it turns out, Heth gets a phenomenal turn 3 draw and just hits Innovation off of the Clerk plus the Silver in the same hand, and TeamOkay does as well. So I guess the Clerks did enough. Hmm. So both players have Innovation already. And TeamOkay's already got an Artisan. So just on the basis of that, I'm going to guess they're in the lead. I don't think 4 versus 5 is actually going to be that big of a deal here, because there's good cards at 5, yeah, draw cards and villages, but there's also solid draw and villages at 4. 6, I think, is going to be a key number, at least for the first few turns, because you want to get probably at least 2 to 3 Artisans in the deck. Bandit, I just noticed that Colony is around. I don't think that changes all too much about how you play here. It means you need to have 11 money in your deck instead of 8 money, but you still only have the 1 buy. So it's mostly about being able to build a deck that does a bunch of stuff plus buys a victory card. Bandit Camp is definitely substantially improved by rapid expansion because the spoils normally get in the way and make it a bit cumbersome. But rapid expansion would mean the spoils get set aside and played for free at the start of the next turn. Ironically, though, to get that activated, you have to first play a bunch of rustic villages to make your bandit camps better. All right, we got the first bishop gained from Heth. I'd say right about now, it's not an unreasonable time to add a bishop. If you're lucky, your opponent doesn't have any junk in hand. I would make sure. This is probably the order you would naturally do it anyway. Actually, let me think about this. Between Old Witch and Bishop, which one would you rather play first? I think if I had the villages for it, it might make sense to play the Bishop first, because then if they trash the curse to Bishop, and then you play the Old Witch, you already gotten the curse out of their hand and they can't trash it, and then maybe they miss out on trashing a copper or something. Probably doesn't make much of a difference. There are some minor mind games to be had there. With 2 money, Faithful Hound definitely looks better than nothing to me, but TeamOkay chooses not to buy anything. You can make these useful just by adding any number of rustic villages to your deck. I mean, even if they're in your hand, it's still a draw card. I forgot if innovation overrides rapid expansion. I believe they trigger at the same time, right? Let me read these. When you gain an action or treasure, and when you gain an action. Yeah, so rapid expansion and innovation would trigger at the same time, which means you can choose the order. And so if you want to play it immediately, which probably you do, you just choose the innovation to happen first, and then that stops rapid expansion from setting it aside. Is these decks still going to take a second to come together because there's a bit of a lack of thinning, so they're not fully reliable, but you just keep shoving enough actions and draw, and eventually you're going to get there. That was a very fortunate draw off the top. TeamOkay pitched 2 cards to draw an extra card and drew into a village followed by an old witch. About as good as you can ask for there. I think another artisan looks good. I would not be unhappy to have 3 artisans. Yep. There's 2 stacks of villages. You can certainly support that. Oh, and here we have a demonstration of the answer to your question from a second ago. TeamOkay gained a bishop with rapid expansion active and chose to play it immediately using innovation to stop from getting set aside. The artisan effect is too slow. Like you couldn't gain a bishop and then choose to top deck it with artisan to avoid rapid expansion, because this is a separate effect. So you do this, rapid expansion and or innovation would trigger after the first step, and then you'd set aside a card. It's got the Siren Gatekeeper rules, right? Yeah, it's pretty similar to that, where both Siren and Gatekeeper also are on gain triggers. All right, yeah, buying a colony probably makes sense. You got a bunch of artisans, and so if you want to keep building, you can be gaining all the engine pieces with artisan, whereas the only way to get a colony is by buying it. You don't absolutely have to be buying colonies as early as possible, because bishop's a decent source of extra points. Hmm. So the thing I was describing a second ago, Heth plays a bishop, and TeamOkay chooses to trash an estate over a curse. I think expecting maybe they have an old witch in hand, and I'm holding on to the curse just in case. Shame you can't KC spoils here. Yeah, once rapid expansion is active, I think it is impossible to get a spoils into your deck because they play themselves, they set themselves aside, and then they immediately return themselves to the deck. That being said, I don't think there's really that much upside to using King's Cash on a spoils. You make a million money, but you only have 1 buy anyway, so you never need to have more than 11. And just having a few bandit camps in your deck is going to get you to 11 naturally. That seems like a mistake. In fact, I'm going to go further and say that's very clearly a mistake. So TeamOkay is over terminaled here and had 2 actions. They must have thought they had another village down there, I think is the only explanation, as they lost track of what was in their deck and expected to draw into a village. If you've got some artisans and an old witch and a bishop, and you're limited on actions, you could play an artisan, gain a village, play it, now you're back to 2 actions. Play an artisan, gain a village, play it, back to 2 actions. Then you could follow up with your old witch and your bishop, and then your artisan still did something for you that turn. TeamOkay just missed out on 2 essentially free villages. Still a lot of curses in this deck, although I think 2 of them are about to get cleared out here. That's cute. So the TeamOkay innovated the bandit camp to get the effect immediately. Oh, maybe that's what happened. I was mentioning earlier not playing the art. Maybe it had TeamOkay already used. Ah, I understand now. That was the problem. They'd already used innovation earlier in the turn to play a magnate. I was sitting there being like, obviously you play those artisans, gaining a village. The answer was with rapid expansion around. if they've already used their one innovation for the turn, they wouldn't be able to gain and also play the villages. That explains everything. Okay, I understand now what went awry there. It does look like TeamOkay is ahead. I'm just gonna assume on the basis of they've had three artisans for a while, so their opponent's one. And if you're reliably playing a bunch of artisans, that's kind of like most of what your deck can reasonably do here. I am shocked that of all the terminal actions in their deck, they thought that Clerk was the most important to play. That doesn't seem correct. I want to bishop some draw at this point. No, I, I like the draw cards. They draw you into your other cards. That was a doozy of a turn. Yeah, I think both players, I think, just have fewer villages than they require. I am thoroughly unconvinced. Okay, I want to revise my statement. You can bishop draw cards as long as it's the magnate. I don't know why there's a magnate in this deck. Do you plan on hanging on to those coppers just to make your magnate draw? That don't make no sense. That was the magnate that they gained and played, so maybe it was just they had a bunch of coppers in hand at that precise point and needed a magnate to make that turn function. Where did the magnate gain happen? Okay, yeah, they had five treasures in hand when they gained the magnate. That's why they did that. It was just useful in the circumstance. But I don't think the magnate has much long-term utility in this deck. Tio just discarded a copper there. Ah, you're asking a valid question. So, Heth plays an envoy and reveals two coppers, Faithful Hound, Old Witch, and Rustic Village. And TeamOkay makes them discard a copper. uh, just in case they innovate a mag. I don't know. I don't. That doesn't make any sense. You're right. Mm. Maybe they just got momentarily confused about how envoy functions. Like, oh, look at these five cards. I don't want a copper. Get that out of here. Okay, game one to TeamOkay. Number two. Looks like we're lacking four villages here. Yeah, no villages in the whole kingdom. Got a lot of terminal draw with Wild Hunt, Catacombs, Sheepdog, Mountain Shrine. But not a lot you can do with that. Sans actions. Oh, that's a good guess. So Heth had bought the envoy on the previous turn. And if your team okay, maybe you see, oh, the first card they played of their turn was an envoy. This must be a dud. They have no actions left. And then realize it was rapid expansion playing it. That's a plausible hypothesis. Anyways, back to the current kingdom. So we got no villages, a bunch of terminal draw, which looks weak in the absence of villages. You got some thinning with Mountain Shrine and Remodel, as well as Mercenary. Oh, also Enhance. I don't think Enhance is very good here. At least not early. Turn your. I guess once you get a bunch of action cards in play, you could enhance a copper straight into a peddler. I think the only non-terminal way to activate dogs here is Urchin trashing itself. Yes, if you wanted to play sheepdogs and draw into additional action cards, which you also have the ability to play. You need to gain something non-terminally in the action phase. You could play an urchin, play another urchin, trash urchin to the second urchin, gain a mercenary, and that triggers all your sheepdogs. But now you've got a mercenary in your deck, so you can't do that every single turn. Aside from that, you could gain stuff in the buy phase with Anvil. You could remodel into something. But yeah, I think there's no way to like draw your deck, then play a remodel this game. Okay, so how do they open? Just double urchin. That's probably right. The annoying thing about urchin, urchin's just a nasty card. And it is frequently correct to just open with two of them, because if they collide, you get a mercenary. The problem is they're less likely than 50% to collide. So you're just really rolling the dice. And if you don't hit the collision, you just open with two more or less blank cantrips. Uh, so neither, fortunately, or at least equally suffering, neither player got the activation. If you don't activate the urchins immediately, it's almost always correct to buy a third urchin, which neither player has done. Intriguing. They did add an innkeeper, which I guess increases your chances of colliding them. But like if you don't line up the urchins on the first reshuffle, you definitely want to make it happen on the second reshuffle. And so I think just as a rule of thumb, you buy another urchin if your urchins don't collide. These players got greedy and went for an immediate anvil. So Heth got a mercenary turn 5, and then TeamOkay did as well. So neither got punished for it. What's activating growth here? It's like Mountain Shrine, and I think that's it. I could easily see opening with Mountain Shrine, if not for the double Urchin opening. I think the other plausible contender would be like double Mountain Shrine or Silver Mountain Shrine or something to that effect. And then you thin reliably but more slowly with Mountain Shrine. And if either player had taken that path, we'd be seeing growth active. Mercenary games are rather unpleasant. Part of the problem is because your opponent's mercenary makes it really hard for your mercenary to function. So, like here, for example, you have a 3 card hand, you play Innkeeper. Even if you get back around to your mercenary, you wouldn't be able to play it here. The way mercenary works is you trash 2 cards, and only if you trashed 2 cards do you get the 2 cards and 2 coins. So if you manage to draw around your mercenary, but with a 2 card hand, you play mercenary, trash one other card. You just trashed 1 card for no benefit, which isn't terribly good. Rather unfortunate draw there. Discarding a state was weird. You're probably right. If you know the mercenary's coming up, probably better keep the estate around to trash it. Peddler Enhance is kind of awkward. So Peddler costs 8, which means in theory you can enhance it into a province. The problem is enhance happens in the buy phase, and so if you play too many actions, then Peddler cost reduces itself and can no longer be enhanced. You could play one other action, Peddler would cost 6, and then you could enhance a Peddler in your hand into province. Normally, Peddler's pretty good as a trash for benefit target, like for remodel, for example. Something that trashes it in the action phase. You butcher a Peddler or you broker a Peddler, you get a lot of value out of it. But enhanced, not quite so much. Peddler's still a good card here just for the money, even if you never trash it. We're trashing the anvil. Is that correct? Not sure. It's like anvil's the only real gains here. Maybe once you're out of peddlers, there's just nothing cheap worth gaining. Is that so? Neither player wants their anvil anymore, I guess so. Not sure if silver, for example, would be better than nothing in this deck. Like, all right, you got 5 peddlers. Where do you go from here? If you're just remodeling a peddler into province each turn, what are you buying? Unclear. So TeamOkay is trashed. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Gotta start over. So let me just wait till they stop undoing things, and then I'll try to count. Okay, I think we're good. Okay. TeamOkay is trashed. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 of their 10 starting cards, it looks like. And for Heth, 2, 4. Okay, so Heth seems fairly behind. And I think it just goes back to from earlier, not playing the mercenary all that often early on. You remodeling the mercenary now? Turn it into an estate? I guess the estate should die first. You enhance the mercenary into an estate this turn and then remodel it next turn. Yeah, looks like that's what's happening. No, we just turned it into a copper. Puzzling. I guess to me that suggests they just plan on remodeling peddlers from here on out. And they'd rather have a copper in the deck than a dead mercenary. That takes province already. The trouble is this deck has 2 remodels, but it's still got tons of junk in it. So you're not going to be doing that very reliably. Not that there's a solution to that. This is just quintessential Urchin game. You click Urchin a bunch, one player just spontaneously ends up way ahead. It happens. Right? Is gold good here? Uh, a 6 cost card does have value in that it is 2 away from province and can be remodeled into a province. The question to my mind, is whether that's better than simply buying a fairgrounds, which is points if you don't trash it, and also gets you a province if you do. Hmm. Where's the deck coming from? Oh, Heth also has a mountain shrine. Yeah, I think mountain shrine would have been a plausible opening, but this deck has two remodels on a mercenary. I don't think that you're likely to be playing that mountain shrine for value here. Maybe they're trying to make growth happen before the game ends. You gain a gold, gain a duchy off of your gold or something. I don't think that's going to be nearly in time. But yeah, the mountain shrine looks wrong. Yeah, most of Heth's problems all go back to not playing mercenary often enough early. And I think they're trying to compensate for having a junkier deck by just adding more remodels so that they can line up a remodel and a peddler in a given hand. And I mean, for what it's worth, despite having a deck that is abysmal by comparison, they got a points lead, and it's not easy to, come back from behind here. So they can hang on for a second longer. Maybe they eke out a tie or something. Uh, that might have been a mistake. So with full knowledge of what was on top of their deck, which obviously they didn't have, had they just played the Mountain Shrine and drawn into the copper, they could have enhanced the Peddler into a province, because Peddler would have still cost 6. Obviously, they didn't know the copper was on top, and there's a decent number of coppers in the deck. Looks like I probably would have lost anyway. I would have definitely considered taking the penultimate province there if you're functionally behind because your deck's much worse. And if you buy that province and your opponent takes a province, that's a tie. Obviously, that risks losing to like province in a state, but it's a risk that I'd be taking in that position. Okay, a new kingdom. We've got Highwayman plus Crown as the main village is truly nasty. So you do have some backup villages in the form of Gondola, which is a village once on game, and Contract, which is a delayed village. But easily the best village here is Crown. I guess there's also Mastermind. That's probably enough to suffice. But surely you would want to play with Crown, except that Highwayman nullifies the first treasure you play each turn. Now, if you have a Duration Gondola or Contract from the previous turn, that doesn't count as playing it, so that's not going to get hit by the Highwayman attack. But if the first treasure you play is your crown, because it's your action phase, that crown gets nullified. So imagine having like 2 crowns and a sage or something in your starting hand, and you lead with the crown, and then your turn's over. Hmm. So probably the answer is just you skip crown here because the highwayman hazard is too high, and you play with some masterminds for villages, and then highwayman for draw. How do you open? Hmm. Gondola Silver and Sage Weaver. I think I prefer the Gondola Silver opening. Hitting 5 looks good here. Even if there's 4s you want, you could demand the 4s. But I would like to get, like, early Highwayman looks quite good. So TeamOkay hits 5 and goes for Demand plus Island. This has, what, 2/3 chance of hitting 5 again as long as they bottom deck in a state. I think the odds were lower than that on turn 3, and they just happen to have a bunch of treasures on top. 2 silvers. What is going on over here? Okay, I feel like this is unjustifiably lucky. I don't think that Heth's opening was really conducive to hitting five, and they just happened to draw five coppers on turn four, which will do it. Ah, so TeamOkay took two money immediately off the gondola to get to seven for gather. Is that better than just delaying it and buying a five? Maybe? It's not obvious to me that it is. I would expect a second Highwayman here for Heth. Unlike most duration cards, Highwayman you can in theory play every turn because it exits play at the start of your turn, but it's always going to end up in your discard pile, which is like the very last cards that you're going to see. And so unless you have a lot of deck control, you can't plan on seeing the one Highwayman reliably. They went with a crown instead. That's a dangerous crown. It's a real dangerous crown. Your opponent's Highwayman is going to cause you some problems. I don't know. Maybe they missed that. I don't think you take crown here if you notice the Highwayman interaction. We're going to have two money here. I think you play both of these. Play one next turn the gondola, buy a gondola, and play the other. Seems worth it. Or you could do it that way. They played the gondola now, so they could afford a demand. That works as well. Suppose you mastermind crown under Highwayman. Does Highwayman nullify all crown plays or just the first one? Only the first one. Similar to what would happen if your opponent played an enchantress, you're and you mastermind, say, a weaver or something. The first weaver play will be cantripped, and then you play weaver normally two more times. Okay, this turn it looks like the goal is to get a charm because we need more gains. Got more money than we need, but you can resolve that by just durationing a bunch of these gondolas and leaving them aside for the next turn. Do you want to gather here? I guess. The wording on HM is ambiguous. It says the first treasure, not the first play. Let me read that. Until then, the first treasure each other player plays each turn does nothing. Yeah, you have a good point. So like the first play of a treasure each turn does nothing, or something to that effect. Oh my. TeamOkay did not add a charm. That seems quite mistaken to me. Hilarious is not the word I would use to describe it. Highwayman Crown is just kind of sad. That Crown got to be a copper this turn. Okay. Now we've got a bunch of actions we can't play because we added more terminals despite not getting Mastermind down. Here, I think you just buy the charm outright because I'm not convinced adding threes and fours to this deck is better than nothing. Nope, we want another gondola. Oh, I guess never mind. The gondola lets you play one of these actions. Yeah, that makes sense then. Um, Solves the terminal problem. TeamOkay once again seems ahead. Heth needs a charm, but also is still on the one highwayman, which is a problem. I think were that crown to be a highwayman, they'd be in a much better spot. They also don't have the contracts, and the contracts are helpful for thinning. Contract in general not the strongest card, but Peaceful Cult is one of the better uses for favors, especially in a kingdom with otherwise fairly weak trashing. I think the Weavers were just not great at getting you to five consistently, and this kingdom looks to be largely about hitting five. That's where most of the important cards are. What are we taking now? Why didn't Island get played? Did they have anything worth setting aside in hand? I'm not sure what you intended to set aside with the island. Sage. Yeah, it sure sounds like the Newton's Cradle is active in the background. We demanded an estate. Did they contract the island? No, they contracted the Sage. Intriguing. And what did they gain? Another charm? I guess they just really wanted a horse on top, maybe? For I don't know. Struggling to make sense of that one. It's like Mastermind plus a thing that top decks horses is pretty good because you kick off your turn by drawing six cards and getting two extra actions. But you got two highwaymen in play. You're gonna have an 11 card hand anyway, and you're passing up on adding another highwayman or another mastermind. And then what's happening over here? Crown's still not doing a whole heck of a lot. I presume. Actually, what do I presume? I was gonna say we mastermind the mastermind and then add a charm. There's not a win here, I don't think. Maxing out at 4 gains. Interesting play. I think I like the idea. Keth is certainly behind, and so maybe you hope something disastrous happens over here, and then you can sneak out a state pile out. Like Team OK absolutely has to take a big points lead here because otherwise the threat is Mastermind, triple play the Weaver, and then buy out the last estate. So you need to have at least 21 points here to be safe, which they will be able to do. Or at the very least, it puts some pressure on him to do that. So TeamOkay does not have enough gains to pile out the estates themselves, which means this should just be double province. Is there any possible draw in which heth can gain 3 estates off of this weaver, play another weaver, and then also buy a duchy? I don't think so, not with this hand at least. Maybe if they had the highwayman in play. Yeah, so now 4 estates is not going to be enough. A poor crown. And now there's not even realistically a pile out threat, I don't think, because without the mastermind in play, I don't think heth can gain 3 estates in a turn. Like if they collide their weavers, they could play one weaver, gain a gondola to play the other weaver, but that's not lowering the estates any. And this will just be a win here. All right, 3-0 for TeamOkay. So potentially the final game coming up. No. Oh, never mind. I saw a groom and a victory card right next to it, but it's a 5 cost victory card. That actually might still be the best thing to do here. But groom is particularly degenerate with any $4 victory cards because it's quite good at emptying 3 piles. You just play a bunch of grooms, gain a bunch of grooms, gain all whatever the gardens or mill or tunnel or what have you are, and then you pile up the estates. Here we once again don't have a village. We got some sort of non-terminal draw with Rice Broker, other than you need a way to get actions into your deck to trash. You got some terminal draw with Wayfarer and Margrave, plus buys Margrave. Hmm. I'm just imagining a deck that adds a groom or two and uses those to get estates, and then just buys Marchland on 5. Uh, Marchland is pretty strong as far as alternative sources of VP go. You get a bunch of the estates and a bunch of Marchlands, and all of a sudden they're worth about as much as provinces. The thing that would worry me about that deck is if, say, your opponent is playing Margrave big money, are you hitting 5 from a 3 card hand? I don't know that you are. And then what if you just can't empty the Marchlands? All right, what are they doing? Let me go back and look. Okay, so heth has the 5-2 and goes for Sentry plus an Engineer. That seems sensible. I think the other option could be Margrave nothing, and then maybe plan on just trashing less or not at all. But Sentry makes sense. TeamOkay goes for double silver, looking to hit 5 or 6, and does not manage it. Just hits 4 twice, buys 2 more silvers. It's already looking like we might be going to a game 5. Rice Broker Silver. I don't think these decks are ever gonna fully come together into anything. A gold. I mean, in this kingdom, it's hard to even definitively say that that's wrong. It's just a fairly weak kingdom all around. Uh, I guess yeah, they're probably already locked into Margrave big money if they got a Margrave in the deck. You hit 6 early, you could consider an altar and use altar to gain march lands. For trashing our estate, this might end up turning into more of a province game. Although I could easily see what ends up happening being you play something like Margrave Big Money, which is kind of what these decks look like they're trending towards. And then, oh, it's going to be a sad turn if you can't find the Margrave. I guess you just buy a free Marchland with the extra money. Anyways, you start out going for provinces, and then at some point, your deck has a bunch of victory cards. You can buy an extra Marchland or two, and then you throw a Groom into that deck to gain a few estates late in the game, maybe. Yeah, I think I'd click Marchland here because it comes with a buyback, and then think about the second buy afterwards. No, we just want a province immediately. Okay. I'm surprised by that choice. I thought trashing the Wayfarer and playing the Margrave looked pretty automatic. You can make use of the estates by buying a marchland, discard 2 estates and a province and a century or whatever else, and then make most of the money back. Like this. There we go. Marchland. Looks good to me. Nope, we just want a province. I think you leave the copper on top. I'm not sure what those bottom 2 cards are offhand. Uh, Marchland? It costs 2 money functionally. Discard 3 cards, get 3 money back. There we go, finally. And yeah, I like the Rice Broker. Provinces are low. Rice Broker is a lot of draw all at once to get you across the finish line. That's a toughie of a discard. I think maybe just pitch the Rice Brokers in the estate and play the Margrave. No, we're going big, which also makes sense. I think this is the other plausible set of cards to discard down to. It's just awkward seeing a big chunk of your money in the discard now. Hmm. I don't think you want to trash the Margrave. The attack matters. Yeah, I think this is probably right. The other option was trashing the copper to draw 2 more. Interest. After being entirely locked in on provinces earlier in the game, now we're back to buying marchlands. I mean, as it turns out, it is the right answer. TeamOkay has a province in hand if they want it, and is going for it. All right, this looks like it's going to be a win for heth with a decent draw here. Yeah, that'll do it. Okay. Heth stays alive for game 5. It is now 3-1 Team OK's favor. What do we have here? Looks pretty limited on gains. Eventually, fortune is plus buy. Until then, your only gainer is duplicate. For draw, there's black cat and swamp shacks, which isn't a lot. Only villages, swamp shacks. No, everything is a village the way of the ox. And then trashing. Ooh, no trashing and charlatans around. That looks pretty nasty. Yeah, so probably most important goal here early is play charlatan a bunch. So surely you're clicking Overlord either turn 1 or turn 2, because that gets you a de facto charlatan in your deck immediately. TeamOkay goes with a militia first. Heth has the 3-4 split. Looks to be going for Vassal plus Overlord. I think that makes sense. Just an Overlord would also make some sense. All right, and now we get into the cursing step. Black Cat's attack is not going to matter very much here. I would buy an Overlord, I think. Yeah. But Black Cat's still not a bad card. With Way of the Ox, if you collide 2 Black Cats, you play 1 for actions, and then you play 1 for draw. And then all you really did there was spin your wheels, and you're back to a 5-card hand and back to 1 action. But you got 2 actions in play, which is a net improvement when you got Swamp Shacks in your deck. So you can't really have too many Black Cats here. Plus, if your deck is full of Black Cats, then you're going to draw some cards for free whenever your opponent gains a province later in the game. I'm interested to see if we end up with a functional engine here. Like, it would not surprise me, given that the decks are going to be kind of junky early on. Maybe just turns into buy a province per turn. There's definitely room to build stuff here. Okay, duplicate definitely signifies that TeamOkay is building. I think that's probably correct. It's gonna take a while to get fortune revealed. You can get there without gaining a gladiator, but it's playing your overlord gladiator until you've trashed all the gladiators from the pile. But in the meantime, duplicate still lets you gain 2 or 3 things per turn. Plus, the duplicate is itself a threat for gaining a lot of duchies later in the game, which can matter. What curse book looking like? 3-3 probably. Why are there 8 instances of gains of curse? Oh, no, not no, there's 7. So I think it is now 5-3 on curses. Or Magpie. Yeah, so TeamOkay about to win the curse split 6-4. Duplicate's the only gainer here. Okay, I guess 9 duplicates is a lot of duplicates. Uh, I don't know that we needed that many of them. So I think TeamOkay ought to be in the lead, just given how curses went. Unfortunately, I think we're not going to see these decks come together. Curses are empty, duplicates are super low. That creates a lot of pile pressure all of a sudden. Black Cat's pretty low. Plus, Duchy is just a pile that's naturally threatening now. If you can take like 5 or 6 of the Duchies, then your opponent's duplicates don't have a whole lot to do. You've got a points lead, and then piling out Duchies and duplicate becomes a big threat all of a sudden. All right, so if they both have 5 curses, then they should be at -2 points. Is that right? No, they don't both have 5 curses. Heth has 6 curses and TeamOkay has 4. So looking at their points means Heth has one card that they have a single copy of, the Vassal. So before the game ends, they're going to want to get a second Vassal, it looks like, at some point. And TeamOkay also has a single copy of something. I think it's not the Militia. Gondola, looks like. Yeah. But they've just rectified here. Actually, Heth's position is not so bad, just on account of having a million duplicates down. That's going to create some problems for the Duchy pile. Like, I think maybe you just buy this duplicate, and then next time you hit 5, you just take every Duchy you can. That looks like a big deal because the first province that you gain is only going to be worth 3 points, essentially, with Wolf Den. So you really need to gain like 2 provinces to even be getting a reasonable amount of points out of the province pile. So if you can win a majority of the duchies here, I think it is quite threatening to end the game with duchies before they can come back on provinces. So I think I like buy this duplicate and then pile drive the duchies. How likely is Heth to hit 5? I don't know about next turn precisely, but like an Overlord for a Charlatan would be an easy way to get up to 5, as an example. I don't like the gondola at all. I quite dislike the gondola. That is -3 points, yeah. If you're not buying duplicate, you should buy probably something you have a copy of already, like another vassal, maybe. Probably not Black Cat, because Team OK has the points lead, and you don't want to lower that pile. Ah, interesting. I was expecting Ox the duplicate, play the Black Cat. I think all you're trying to do is hit 7, not 7, hit 5 here, and get a bunch of duchies. Like, I don't think you need to have 6 duplicates down and take all the duchies to win. I think if you can get like 5 of the duchies, that creates a big problem for your opponent on its own. So play Black Cat, hope to draw at least 1 money, which is pretty likely. And then you get your second gondola, and then you get the duplicate down. That could also work. Be pretty sad if you missed. I don't love the estate for exactly this reason. It is an actual 1 point because you do have estates to work with, but I probably would just bought a vassal there.
The problem that Heth's going to run into is there might just not be enough duchies left to make use of. Like, there's already too few duchies for you to use all 5 of your duplicates. A second gondola would indeed have been more points than an estate. Oh, it wasn't 100% guaranteed that they drew into enough money for the gondola, but it was a good chance. Okay, so what's the duchy split? TeamOkay has all of them. So if Heth takes 5 duchies here, that's 15 points. They're tied exactly. You got to take the duchies, right? A tie would lose the match because if you're the first one to 3.5 wins, you win. But if Team OK bought the last duplicate, that wouldn't be a true tie. It's only an actual tie game if player 2 ties the game. If the game ends in a tie on player 1's turn, the person who took fewer turns will win. Yeah, I think like you still need to get a province or something, or even a gondolas have to take a points lead. The problem you're just going to run into here is the biggest saving grace was all of these duplicates, and they're just running out of stuff to do as Team OK buys the duchies one by one. Like now, taking 4 duchies is not a threat at all. I think Kep was in the lead here, at least for a window there, when they had a bunch of duchies down, or sorry, a bunch of duplicates down, and they just never converted it into duchies. And now that the window has closed, only realistic way out now is getting a bunch of provinces, and that's just not going to happen in time. I wonder if just playing the duplicate was better for Team OK there. Not clear. The estate could potentially make a difference. Yeah, so here, for example, you buy you buy all the duchies, and then if your opponent hits 4, they just take the duplicate, and they still have a point lead and they win. I think this probably is correct nonetheless, and you just have to hope that Team OK whiffs. It's not going to be a whiff. Oh, they take 2 duchies. Maybe they're going to have an estate pile out? 5 estates is only 5 points. So delay the gondola, buy a state, call some number of duplicates, probably not quite all of them. Maybe you gain like 4 estates. Take all the estates, then your opponent wins with 4 money. If you take 4 estates, and they buy the last estate, well, now there's a risk of what if you hit province and you take the points lead. I think you could have justified taking 4 and being safe. Or I mean, nothing's really safe, but you would have not immediately lost to a pile out. Yeah, even a province here. I mean, a province is worth 9 points, right? Yeah, it's 1-1 on provinces. So the second province is going to be 6 points plus 3 points from undoing the Wolfden effect. But that's still only 19. I mean, if you're not hitting province on the turn where you had the gondola down, you're just not hitting province. Okay, that's the match. 4-1 for Team OK. Continues upsetting through the bracket and will now play Fika, the 20th seed. And the winner of that makes it into the final 8.